As more and more begin to know, the status quo has got to go. They're bound to say yes to a man named Dr. No, a man who makes the establishment panic. Grassroots are growing way too wild, too organic.
So this is a huge story from The Intercept that was published on Wednesday. So the U.S. State Department encouraged the Pakistani government in a March 7th, 2022 meeting to remove Imran Khan as prime minister over his neutrality on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And this is according to a classified Pakistani government document that was obtained by The Intercept. So the meeting, which was between the Pakistani ambassador to the United States and two State Department officials, has been the subject of intense scrutiny, controversy, and speculation in Pakistan over the past year and a half, as supporters of Khan and his military and civilian opponents jockeyed for power. The political struggle escalated on August 5th when Khan was sentenced to 3 years in prison on corruption charges and taken into custody for the second time since his ouster. Khan's defenders dismissed the charges as baseless, and the sentence also blocks Khan, Pakistan's most popular politician, from contesting elections expected in Pakistan later this year, so he cannot run. And this is huge. Again, he's been saying that the U.S. pressured Pakistan to oust him this whole time. That's what his supporters have been saying, and now this is proof that the U.S. did. So 1 month after the meeting with U.S. officials documented in the leaked Pakistani government document, a no-confidence vote was held in parliament, leading to Khan's removal from power. The vote is believed to have been organized with the backing of Pakistan's powerful military. Since that time, Khan and his supporters have been engaged in a struggle with the military and its civilian allies, whom Khan claims engineered his removal from power at the request of the United States. The text of the Pakistani cable produced from the meeting by the ambassador and transmitted to Pakistan has not been previously published. The cable, known internally as a cipher, reveals both the carrots and the sticks that the State Department deployed in its push against Khan, promising warmer relations if Khan was removed and isolation if he was not. So, again, this is huge. The document, labeled secret, includes an account of the meeting between State Department officials, including Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Donald Liu, and Asad Majid Khan, who at the time was Pakistan's ambassador to the U.S. The Intercept says that they received this from an anonymous source in the Pakistani military who said that they had no ties to Imran Khan or his party. The Intercept is they published the body of the cable. So really, I just want to go down. So this is a very long, detailed article about this situation that you should all definitely check out if you have the time. So this has been a long time in the works, and President Biden on Wednesday signed an executive order banning American investments in certain technologies in China, marking a significant escalation in the economic war against Beijing. So the order prohibits American venture capital and private equity firms from investing in three technology sectors in China: semiconductors and microelectronics, that's one sector; quantum information technologies; and certain artificial intelligence systems. So the order restricting investments in China has been years in the making, as Biden administration officials have been at odds over how far this executive action should go. I know they got a lot of input from Congress on what they were going to do with this. And a Biden administration official said that the order also creates an outbound screening mechanism. And I'm not sure exactly the details of that, but I would assume that applies to, say a company wants new investments in Chinese tech. I think the U.S. government is going to look at it. Biden's using his executive power here. And this is a pretty unprecedented move in this era of U.S.-China relations, since they normalized relations in 1979 and began this very robust trade partnership. That's all being scaled back now. So the U.S. is considering using Australia as a missile testing ground as part of the AUKUS military pact. So AUKUS is a three-way deal between the U.S., Britain, and Australia, primarily focused on technology sharing with the goal of Canberra acquiring nuclear-powered submarines. The three nations have also announced their intention to jointly develop hypersonic missiles. So U.S. Army Secretary Christine Wormuth said that Australia's contribution to AUKUS does not have to be in dollars, and pointed to its vast uninhabited land as a testing ground for hypersonic and other types of long-range precision missiles. She said, quote, "A challenge for us in the United States when it comes to hypersonics, or even some of our things like the precision strike missile, which is not a hypersonic weapon but has very long ranges in some of its increments, for us to find open spaces in the United States where we can actually test these weapons, it's a challenge. Australia obviously has a tremendous amount of territory where that testing is a little bit more doable, so I think that's a unique thing as an example that the Australians bring to the table," end quote. So Niger's ruling junta on Wednesday accused France of violating Niger's airspace and freeing terrorists as tensions continue to rise in West Africa after the ousting of Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum. So the coup leaders shut down Niger's airspace on Sunday to prepare for potential military intervention as ECOWAS has threatened to use force to reinstate Bazoum. So the junta, which is calling itself the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, said that a French aircraft entered Niger from Chad on Wednesday morning despite the ban on air traffic. And they said it deliberately cut off all contact with their air traffic control. And then the French are saying that they denied the accusation. They didn't deny that the flight happened, but they said it had been coordinated with Niger's military. So the junta said that France also unilaterally freed captured terrorists and claimed that the freed jihadists were planning attacks in the tri-border area where Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali meet. France also denied having released any terrorists. So the Niger coup leaders also reported attacks on Niger military forces, and I saw some reports saying that they were accusing France of attacking them, but according to Africa News and other sources that I saw, that statement did not link the terrorist attacks with the terrorists allegedly released by France. And there is always a lot of fighting going on in Niger, as I've said, as the U.S. Counterterrorism effort there has not gone very well, and there's just been an uptick in their whole region, the Sahel region, a huge uptick in terrorists. The U.S. to give the Saudis a defense commitment. So Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen has called for the U.S. to provide Saudi Arabia with defense commitments as Israel is vying for a normalization deal with Riyadh. So, the situation right now, an Israeli-Saudi normalization deal is expected to be a very long way off. I would be surprised if it happened. The Biden administration wants to get it done before the 2024 election, but I'd be surprised if that happened. But Saudi Arabia has been looking to get security guarantees out of the U.S. if it does ever happen. That's what they're saying their demands are. And Israel is saying, yeah, give them these guarantees.
When we talk about the uniparty versus the people, I think it's people are generally rational, they're good, and this is not... In Washington, D.C., even, I think that the majority of people there are decent, and this is our greatest advantage that, we generally, as Matt Kibbe says, don't want to hurt people, don't want to take their stuff, but there's all these forces that encourage that in the American political system. And I know there's some of you in this room who were saying, of course, the uniparty has been around forever, but, you have to kind of give some people some space to learn that. I remember when I was, in my early 20s watching Dr. Paul on the debate stage, I wasn't ready to obtain that information. And I think while many people were, I think it's a lesson in patience that, humans are generally good people, and, we believe that we're fighting for a moral cause. So if that's the case, I think patience is so critical. And I spent 8 years as a reporter in Washington, D.C., covering foreign policy and international affairs. And basically what I came to conclude after all that time, now I'm a Floridian, is that the whole thing's just an incredible racket. And when people tell me, what think tanks should I support? If I want to make a tax-deductible donation, obviously the Ron Paul Institute. But my kind of the way I separate the good from the bad is do they have a home base in Washington, D.C. or not? And mostly these think tanks, unfortunately, the ones that are corrupted by the system are based in Washington, D.C. I just spoke at the Mises Institute, and they're terrific, and they're based in Alabama. And there's all these other interesting places where there's a lot of interesting policy ideas being traded, and none of them are based in Washington, D.C. And kind of per Newton's third law, every action in nature can result in an equal and opposite reaction. And I think that's what we're seeing. In the early days of this pandemic, we had just so few allies fighting against this. Whether that's in Congress or just in the general population. People were just so propagandized by this. And while the uniparty has strength and wealth and kinetic power, I'm encouraged by this reality that I'm seeing that it doesn't have strength in numbers and in the fact that humans are generally decent people and what the uniparty is doing is not decent. So I think most Americans, when they come to understand this ideology, they deeply detest it when they truly understand what's going on. And there's no greater separation in America today between the interests of the ruling class and the interests of everyone else. But nonetheless, we're in this situation where the institutional Democratic Party is a force for the growth of the government. And I don't know if you guys saw, but during the debt ceiling debate, Kevin McCarthy, it was sort of a Freudian slip, but he was quoted as saying, "We let the government grow, but at a slower rate." And that summarizes the Republican Party of today. And we live in an era of ruthlessly corrupt and deceitful American politicians who do not represent the interests of their constituents, but they act to funnel wealth and sovereignty away from those they represent. The modern politician is basically what Ayn Rand called a looter in the Washington political. They personify everything that is awful about the current system. They've abandoned their constituents' entirety, whether they know it or not, and virtually 90+% are part of the problem. In 2023, it's very clear that both parties are strongly positioned as uniparty vessels. Neither is even remotely committed to empowering the American citizen and preserving his wealth and freedoms. Pretty much everyone in Congress failed this COVID test, and I think this was very revealing of a uniparty in place in Washington, minus a congressman named Thomas Massey, basically, who all he said was, hey, I want a voice vote on these trillions of dollars that we're about to spend. And I remember President Trump was furious with him, and President Trump even called him several times, supported a primary for him, all for just saying, I want you guys to be held accountable for what you're about to do. So it was so, like, there's just these moments in time where it's so revealing about what the actual system is in place. And COVID was just one of many of these kind of like emergencies. We think we have this Bill of Rights. I mean, thank God for our founders' wisdom in making sure that we all own firearms, so they can't do so much. But you think you have all of these rights in place, but suddenly there's an emergency and nothing matters anymore. They can just totally print all the money, rob you of your wealth, and institute these crazy lockdowns that go against the very heart of the foundations of our country. The theme of this conference is truth and lies, but it's actually pretty difficult. I think our greatest hurdle is to distinguish between the truth and lies because there's so much noise and very little signal, especially in the corporate media. You read this stuff, whether it's the Wall Street Journal, which is supposed to be center right, or the New York Times, center left, and Republicans were said to be holding the line with excruciating cuts to your entitlements if you're reading the New York Times, and then Democrats are seeking a clean increase and spending too much if you're reading the Wall Street Journal. But no one said that that they raised the debt ceiling 78 times since 1960. That this is just such a rite of passage that this is going to pass no matter what. No one was really saying that. Even in the op-ed sections of these papers, it was shocking to me that no one was telling the truth. And you would think these democratically elected legislators, they're supposed to be looking out for the interests of their constituents and act as responsible stewards for their fiscal health, and they were doing the exact opposite. It was amazing to watch. It's worth thinking about that initial message of you have to give people time to kind of find their way into the liberty movement, the freedom movement, because I think that we're all just generally decent people. And when you realize how evil the force in Washington, D.C. is, that you'll just kind of come around to this side. I mean, I remember I used to have, when I was in my early 20s, I was a ridiculous globalist, supporting Iraq and Afghanistan, bought into all the propaganda. But I think if you give people their time and their space, and if you keep engaging them and demanding, especially if people who want to consider themselves as thoughtful, you continue to challenge them in a rational way, in a respectful way, and I think they'll come to find the truth. And I think the way we combat the uniparty is to treat everyone as human beings and to stop labeling people as irredeemable because of a handful of issues that we disagree on. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate your time, everyone.
Here's Gerald Salenti with today's trends in the news.
Now, all the currencies in the United States, the printed currencies, they say, in God we trust. What God you talking about? What God you talking about? What God supports murderous wars? Oh, and by the way, just before he came on the air, the news is out. Biden's asking for more money and more weapons to send to Ukraine.
Well, I thought Mrs. Pelosi had taken care of that back when the Democrats controlled the House. They gave him a blank check for $113 billion. We don't know how much of it he's spent. Independent calculations say as much as $68 billion. The Defense Department, the Pentagon, which twice has revised its numbers by $3 billion, says he's only spent $48 billion. But whatever it is, he should be golden until Election Day 2024. He's got another $50 billion to spend. He's going to ask for more money. Yep. Sadly, he'll probably get it.
Oh yeah.
The War Party, which is 95% of Congress, they'll give it to him.
Yep.
Why did Biden blow people away with a drone? Why did Trump assassinate a peaceful Iranian general who was talking about peace with Iraq on his way to lunch in Iraq, and ally of the United States, blow him away with a drone? Why did Obama blow away 2 Americans in Yemen with a drone? Because they can get away with it, and it gives them a feeling of having accomplished something, and they can boast about it, and they can expand their power. They don't consider the horrific damage. People are dead. The damage to the Constitution, the fabric of our law, Well, the president has the power to kill. Look at what his predecessors did.
I mean, really, we're talking about evil people. This is demonic evilness that when you think you have the right to kill anybody that you want, and people accept this. If you or I did it, why those murderous bastards? Why, how dare they kill people? Only I could kill people. I am the president of the United States. I can kill whoever I want, wherever I want, whenever I want. And I'm sane. I'm not demonic. I'm not evil. We have evil, demonic people. What you are expressing about these people is evil and demonic.
Yes, there's no question about it. And what you have said, they have done, and they do it in secret. You know, when Barack Obama killed Anwar al-Awlaki and his son, the father was born in New Mexico. The son was born in Virginia. They were sitting at an outdoor cafe in Yemen, and they were vaporized like that. And Eric Holder, I may have said this on your show, I don't remember. Eric Holder had prepared a legal memo justifying the killing, and somehow the memo was leaked to NBC, and then somebody at NBC sent it to Fox, and I looked at it, and I went on air and explained it. The memo was based on the right of the police to shoot at bank robbers when bank robbers are shooting at them. What? What does that have to do with killing somebody who's innocently walking down the street? That would have flunked a first-year law school class. That's how pedestrian, unsophisticated, and inept this legal theory was by which Obama killed people. Trump used the same theory. Biden used the same theory. Unless people are prosecuted when they violate the Constitution, like the FBI spying using illegal software, the FBI spying on foreigners and then on the Americans to whom the foreign persons speak, unless there's a consequence to this, the government will keep doing it.
The FBI unwittingly investigates itself. The FBI, you know, before we go into this, the FBI, and I say this over and over again, tell me the great things that the FBI has done in our entire lifetime. Tell me one thing.
I can't. I can tell you about the stings they've done. I can tell you about the innocent people they've entrapped. I can tell you about the tens of millions of Americans on whom they've spied. I can tell you about their regular, consistent, systematic violation of the Constitution.
You know, by the way, they just pardoned these guys that they from Newburgh. Do you know about that one? They sent this murderous guy there to go talk these guys into doing it.
Correct. Well, that's what they do. They love to find a loner, a lone wolf, a person disenchanted with society, and that either one of them undercover or somebody that they're prosecuting, doing favors for them undercover, talks the loner into doing something evil. And then they'll give him a barrel of a talcum powder and tell him it's explosives. And as he's about to light the talcum powder, 50 of them will swoop in with cameras and arrest him and then claim that they saved the subways. The subways, of course, were never in danger. It was just talcum powder. The whole thing was a setup.
You're right here. The Fourth Amendment contains some of the most precious language of the Constitution, as it was written intentionally to thwart the rapturous appetite of governments to snoop, which the British did to the colonists using general warrants. General warrants were not based on probable cause of crime and lacked all specificity. Rather, they were based on government needs, a totalitarian standard, because whatever the government wants, it will claim it needs. And they authorized the bearer to search wherever he wished and seize whatever he found. Whatever they found, he found. So we became them.
We have become them. And the general warrants were issued by a secret court. Secret court in London, 1766. Secret court in Washington, D.C., 2023, FISA. General court in London, search where you want, seize what you find. General warrant out of FISA. One FISA search warrant authorized surveillance of all Verizon customers. At the time, that was 115 million of them. And the Constitution requires specifically describing the place to be searched and the person or thing to be seized. They have cut holes in the Constitution, and the people that we have elected to preserve the Constitution have subverted it, and we keep re-electing them.
Yep. And that's what the media has become. It's nothing more than a propaganda outlet, and that's why you subscribe to the Trends Journal.
Correct.
Because if you are among the people that love the New York Times, then of course you despise freedom. You're too stupid to think for yourself, and you hate the truth in Trends, so you would never subscribe to our magazine. I mean, this is how low America's gone. And again, I'm so sad to see how few people are standing up and fighting. We have to unite, Judge, because if we don't, again, they're sending more weapons and more money to Ukraine to keep bloodying the killing fields. And the more drone strikes they get into Russia, the more times they hit Moscow, the harder Russia's going to push back at Ukraine.
You're right. And the Victoria Nuland and Tony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, and to the extent that he thinks the president, still believe they can use Ukraine as a battering ram to drive Putin from office.
That's
Putin
it.
is stronger and more embraced by the Russian people today than he was 2 years ago.